Hello and welcome to the first video in this series of quadratic inequalities. In this series, we're going to be learning how to solve quadratic inequalities. Now, before we begin anything else, I would like to introduce the concept of what is a quadratic inequality. Now, you're used to the idea of linear inequalities. Linear inequalities are inequalities which are in the form of ax plus b is greater than 0 or less than 0 or less than or equal to 0, or greater than or equal to 0, and so on and so forth. You've been dealing with linear inequalities for a very long time. Now, quadratic inequalities are inequalities in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c is greater than 0. Greater than 0 or less than 0 or less than or equal to 0 or greater than or equal to 0. Any of these signs here. The importance that I'm trying to make is of the sign. It can be greater than, it can be less than, it can be less than or equal to, it can be greater than or equal to. But the important thing is you always have to have a 0 at the end. You have a quadratic expression here, ax squared plus bx plus c, and then you have any inequality sign, and then you have a 0 at the end. It's important to have a 0 at the end. For example, if you have the quadratic inequality 2x squared minus 3x plus 4 is greater than or equal to 6. What you would do in this situation is you would take the 6 this side, so it becomes 4 minus 6, which is negative 2, and your inequality ends up becoming 2x squared minus 3x minus 2 is greater than or equal to 0. You always have to have the 0 at the end. This and this are exactly the same thing. These two things are exactly the same thing. We've only moved the 6 this side. So this 0 is important. And in this case, we have a greater than or equal to sign. So the important thing about a quadratic inequality is you always have a quadratic expression on one side of the inequality sign. You always have a quadratic expression. Remember that a quadratic expression is in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. So in this case, we have 2x squared minus 3x minus 2. We have a quadratic expression on one side of the inequality sign, and on the other side of the inequality sign, we have a 0. We have a 0. So that's basically what a quadratic inequality is. Another example, x squared minus 4x plus 6 is less than 0. This is another quadratic inequality. We have a quadratic expression on one side of the inequality sign, and we have a 0 at the end, and so on and so forth. So you get the idea of quadratic inequality. So this brings us to the end of this video, where I just wanted to introduce to you the concept of what is a quadratic inequality. In the next few videos, we're actually going to be looking at ways in which we can solve quadratic inequalities, how we can actually solve them. Given a particular quadratic inequality, we need to be able to actually solve that quadratic inequality. So that brings us to the end of this video, and until next time, thank you.